This is the Tango Alpha Lima podcast.
They call me crazy cause I'm facing all my giants. They try to scare me into thinking I can fight it. They tell me I should never even think of trying. But that's just me, I'm gonna live out in defiance.
Hey there, Alphas. Thanks for joining us. We've got a great show for you today because we're going to be joined by Colonel Bri Fram, that's retired, who started her career, 23-year military career, that is, in the Air Force before moving to the Space Force in 2021, where she used her degrees in aerospace and astronautical engineering, which I'm going to make up that whole degree, and national security studies. Obviously, she's a whiz. Anyway, while in service, she developed spacecraft, no small feat there, and brought life-saving technologies from the laboratory to the battlefield. However, she was forced to retire due to the prohibition on transgender service members that was implemented in 2025, earlier this year. Bree was president of Sparta, a nonprofit transgender military advocacy and support organization, and was a Congressional Defense Fellow, led the Air Force LGBTQ plus initiatives team, and was a member of the State Department's speaker program. She has written 3 books, including Forging Queer Leaders, and hosts the Forged in Fire LGBTQ plus leadership podcast. But before Bree joins us on the show, Adam's got a quick reminder about the USA 250 Challenge, which I'm wearing the t-shirt. Woo!
Nice.
Adam.
USA 250, show us your 250. The American Legion USA 250 Challenge kicked off on July 3rd in celebration of the nation's 250th birthday next year. Did you know that, Joe? It's right around the corner.
I've been trying to keep count. I lost count at like 140 something though.
Between now and July 4th, 2026, the challenge encourages Legion family members to improve their physical and mental health while fundraising for the American Legion Veterans and Children Foundation. The challenge offers 3 categories: fitness, mental wellness, and community service. Participants can log 250 miles or hours in 1, 2, or all 3 categories. They can participate as individuals or as part of a team. Mary J. Fisher of American Legion Post 416 in Encinitas, California, registered for the USA 250 Challenge and was inspired to share a list of 250 activities to support the USA 250 Challenge on her Facebook page. Fisher broke the activities into 16 categories. Very organized, Ms. Fisher is. And we'll have a link in our show notes to a full list. But here's a few examples. Mental and emotional wellness, you could meditate for 10 minutes. You could write a journal. You could attend a wellness workshop. For physical health and activity, you could try yoga or stretching, take a fitness class, or take a walk at sunrise. Hard to do if you're living in Atlanta, though, Joe.
Yeah. Or if you're missing body parts.
Community and giving back, volunteer at a shelter, lead a neighborhood cleanup, help an elderly neighbor. Veteran and military support, help a veteran with errands, create care packages for military, or write thank you notes to the veterans. Stacy, you're America 250 today. What do you think about these activities? What do you think about the celebration?
Well, I've already signed up, and as I mentioned, I got my t-shirt, which anybody who signs up gets a t-shirt in a color of their choosing, whether that's red, white, or blue. I choose blue. And I've already started my community give back hours. So I'm into it, and I'm in deep. So
I like your whole fit. So that's the blue. I definitely want the blue.
Yeah.
That color it looks great. And where do I get the plaid overshirt? Where did I get that?
This is going to be a Duluth trading company.
Okay.
Merchandise. Purchase my favorite little, for all you country folk out there, I'm wearing a plaid shirt over my bright blue America 250 t-shirt.
And it pops. Looks
It
very
does pop. It's
patriotic.
very poppy. It's very poppy. There were 2 different color blue options. I chose the
Mm.
brighter blue. So
Brighter blue. That's what I was going to say. Brighter blue, that looks like.
it's a bright. It's yes, that's a technical color. Brighter blue.
Joe, what
Who
about
are you
you?
wearing
No,
today?
Joe, what about you and I commit to doing 250 miles between now and July 4th next year?
Wait, hold
Okay.
on. You have to wait. Hold on,
What?
Adam. When you
It's
say 250 miles, are you talking about like travel miles, bike miles, walk
Or-
miles?
It's up to you. Hopping miles. Participants can log 250
Hey, do I get 2 for 1 on
hours
hops?
in 1, 2, 3 of the categories: mental and emotional wellness, cool, physical health and activity, community and giving back, veterans and military support. So that's great, and I love that they're making it about those 4 anchor points. But what about going the distance, Joe?
You know, I don't have a hand crank bike anymore, but I have a hand crank stationary bike, and I know that they have measurements on that. I would rather overdo it, so I'll come up with let me do some math and I'll get back with you and let you know how
Because if
much
we did a mile a day, we would only have to do it like 3/4 of the year.
I need to do that. You're
That would be
absolutely
good.
right.
That would be
If I just
healthy.
did 15 minutes a day on that thing, that would probably be 2 miles at
15
least.
minutes would probably be it.
Yeah, and I need to do that because we're getting old and we need to take care of our hearts, Adam.
Yeah. we
Well,
could do it for
technically,
America.
I walk like when I'm having when I walk for fun. I
Mhm.
technically walk about 2 miles a day. That's not
That's
including
good.
my farm
Yeah.
exercise. Like
Yeah, I think it's pointed. Like it has to be. It can't just be what you casually do. I think it's like to go out of your way to.
intentional.
Yeah,
A
Intentional
dedicated
intentional.
log.
I
Yeah.
I'm with you, man. Let's do this because you
Okay.
and I we're big men and we could be even more beautiful just with a
We are
little
bigger.
little
We are
cardio.
more beautiful. And you know what? That's in line with our nation's values. Bigger,
It is.
better,
Yeah.
more beautiful, the land of the free, the home of the
And
brave,
if we
America.
don't do it this year, we'll have to do an extra mile next year. So we might as well get it out of the way this year.
All right. I'm
I d-
gonna commit to it.
I'm down for that. I do want to circle back around to astronautical because I think that's the coolest title I've ever heard. It's like space sailing.
I know a band named Nautilus.
Well, what actually that led me to is you remember that incredible Daft Punk soundtrack for Tron? They had a song called
Oh
Solar
yeah.
Sailing. That if you've never listened to that, even if like EDM is not your kind of thing, which Daft Punk is anyway, I won't argue it, but that whole album's good. But that song, it reminded me of that song, Solar Sailing. Astronautical. Come on. Space sailing.
All
That's
right,
what it
Alphas.
is.
If you haven't registered yet, we'll have a link in our show notes where you can get signed up.
All right, Alphas. Joe's back on task. Please stick around. We'll be back with Bree Fram right after the break.
Join me in the American Legion's year-long celebration of our nation's 250th birthday. We're celebrating America with USA 250 Challenge. What is the challenge? The USA 250 Challenge is built on 3 important features we know well: physical activity, mental wellness, and community service. You can choose to achieve goals in any or all 3 categories. You can participate individually or as part of a team, like an American Legion post, squadron, or unit. How you complete the goal is up to you. For example, in physical activity, you could walk, bike, do yoga to cover 250 miles or 250 hours. For mental wellness, an individual or post could conduct 250 buddy checks or sign up 250 individuals for Be the One training. For community service, just about any project the American Legion Post conduct would work. Cleaning up 250 grave sites of veterans, distributing 250 American flags, or properly disposing of those that need to be retired, teaching 250 children about flag etiquette or the honorable nature of military service. Best of all, your participation helps the American Legion fulfill its mission to serve disabled veterans and children facing hardships. Join the challenge today. Visit legion.org to learn more and register for $30. For your registration fee, you will get to choose a commemorative t-shirt while supporting Veterans and Children Foundation. I look forward to celebrating this special birthday celebration with you.
All right, Alphas. Today we are joined by retired Space Force Colonel Bri Fram, who was one of the highest ranking out transgender officers in the U.S. military before her forced retirement from the Space Force due to the prohibition on transgender service that was implemented earlier this year. She's continuing her service, though, in a meaningful way through her advocacy. Bree's got some legalese she's got to jump off with because, as you can imagine, a lot of eyes are on her. So, Bree, welcome to the show, Tango Alpha Lima podcast. Thank you for your service, and hit us with some legalese. What you got?
Well,
Yes.
thank you for having me, but the legalese is actually required because I am not technically retired yet.
Oh,
I am on administrative leave
okay.
until the end of the year, in the assumption that I will be allowed to retire at the
Okay.
end of that period. But because I am technically still on active duty and subject to the UCMJ, I have to say that I am here recording with you in my personal capacity, and that my views do not necessarily reflect those of the Department of Defense or the United States government. Though as we get through them, it'll probably be obvious why.
Excellent. And so listen, I know this is probably really, you probably talked ad nauseum about it, but I just want to kick off and say thank you for your service. A retirement is well deserved, and though this is still undecided or whatever the heck is going on, people have lost their damn minds. But what is happening? What is happening there in terms of your retirement?
Well, one of the final indignities that I am expecting is what's happening to several folks right now, and that I can't even retire wearing my uniform. I have to retire next to it, because if I were to wear my uniform, I would be brought up on charges for being out of uniform, because I refuse to cut my hair and go back to the standards that do not apply to me. I transitioned and have served openly for nearly a decade. And to be told now that my service, based on executive order, that I and others like me are dishonorable, undisciplined liars who lack the humility required for military service, and are faced with a number of dehumanizing policies is tough. And I am truly grieving what has been lost for so many of us. And I am heartbroken for our country, for the thousands of service members who have served with honor and distinction, who are being forced out right now. And not just for them, but for the hundreds of thousands of others who have served with us, or people that may have considered joining, but seen what is happening to us and say, no, because that might happen to me. So it's been a long and challenging road this year, but I am still so grateful, so thankful for the opportunities that I have had to serve in my career, and for all the people that I have had the pleasure of working with, for, and having the honor to lead.
First of all, thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for your service. And I would love to sort of set a foundation for what we're going to talk about today by asking you every personal question you don't know. I'm just joking. I want to hear a little bit about your life leading up to the military. What brought you towards the Air Force? And by the way, you would be surprised how many times somebody has answered that with, they were the only one open when I showed up. It's wild that somebody's entire trajectory of their life can happen that way. But what drew you towards that, and then aerospace and national defense?
Well, first I'll start with why I didn't pick another service, because when I was growing up, the most common recruiting commercial anyone ever saw was the Army's commercial that said, "We do more by 9 a.m. than most people do all day." I was like, hell no, the Army is not for me. I like to sleep. I am not a morning person. But the quick arc of why did I end up in the Air Force and then the Space Force was that I had no intention of joining in the military. But when I was about 10 years old, a friend of mine, over my objection, dragged me to watch an episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation. And I said, I want to be Geordi. I want to be the one that makes the warp engines go and helps humanity extend out into the stars. So
You were speaking my language now.
yeah, I am a big Trekkie and a huge
Yeah.
nerd. I say, if it's nerdy, I probably tried it and I almost certainly loved it. But that pushed me into a career, and I got a degree in aerospace engineering. And I graduated and was applying for jobs in the summer of 2001 when we were attacked. And that
Yeah.
was the second moment that changed my life in a heartbeat. I had an amazing legacy of military service in my career, particularly from my grandfathers. One of my grandfathers rose to become the youngest first sergeant in the European Theater of Operations in World War II, getting personally yelled at by General Patton, and was offered a battlefield commission for valor, which he turned down because it would have meant he had to go to the infantry instead of staying with the tanks. And my other grandfather captured over 2,000 prisoners of war with his 20 men and 2 Jeeps. And so this just like truly amazing legacy. But all of a sudden I saw, wow, now it's my turn.
Yeah.
It shattered that illusion that the history had ended and that we had this peace and security that couldn't be violated. So when we got attacked, I drove just a couple days later to see the woman who is now my wife. And for those that remember that time, it was like this profusion of American flags was just everywhere. And she lived about 2 hours away. I got halfway, saw an American flag hanging from an overpass. I cried the rest of the way to her house, her apartment, walked in and said, I'm joining the Air Force. And the rest is
And I'm assuming this happened after 9 a.m.
It most definitely happened
Okay.
after 9 a.m. But for a space nerd, the Air Force was really the only place to be. And then later in my career, when we actually had a Space Force and I got to apply to join that service, and they said, would you like to join? That felt like a marriage proposal. I was like, yes, 1,000 times yes. Please
Oh,
let
that's
me in.
wonderful.
Because that was all those dreams.
And that's the part I'm actually really interested to learn a little bit more about. So your final role involved developing future space capabilities. So that's an area most of us only see in sci-fi movies. And I was going to ask Star Wars or Star Trek, but it sounds like Star Trek. So can you walk us through what that actually means in practice? And how is it that your background in aerospace engineering kind of prepared you for that?
Well, I think any undergraduate engineering degree is really just a problem-solving degree. And for me in the military, I did go on to get a master's degree in astronautical engineering. But as a military officer in those roles, really what you have to do is know just enough to be able to frame the problem in the right way, or to know that whatever solution is being proposed by the contractors that are actually designing and building it is breaking one of the laws of physics, or in some other way is made of unobtainium. And we have to be smart enough to know that, pick a better solution, or drive them in a different way. Or we have to be able to advocate for that capability, to explain why these space capabilities that a lot of people don't understand are so critical to the joint force and really underpin our modern way of life. So those of us who are the engineers really just have to be translators. We have to be able to convince you that what we're doing is worth the money that we are investing in it, particularly when so much of it is classified at such a high level that we can't really talk about what it's doing in very many forums. But what we can do is say the Space Force is the one military service that the American people call upon every day. No one is likely to pick up the phone and call the Army and the Navy and say, I need help. But literally every time you're grabbing your phone and navigating your way to the grocery store, or you're using your credit card, you're calling upon the Space Force, because it's GPS that is designed, developed, and operated by the Space Force that is the backing for all those systems. And there are many more like that that enable not just Americans, but particularly our joint force to be effective on a modern battlefield. And there's a whole host of other capabilities that we have to have that protects those functions, that should a war ever extend into space, we are there to win it, to protect our assets and hold our adversaries' assets at risk. And so that's what we were doing in my final job, was defining what is it we're going to need 5, 10, 20 years in the future to be able to ensure we still can fight and win then.
You did such a good job of framing that, but point blank, is there anything that you can actually talk about other than GPS in general that was like a challenge or a breakthrough during that time, or is it all actually classified in nature?
Like, when can I get a hotel room that's exactly like the rooms on the Enterprise?
I hope it is within my lifetime, because I still have dreams of buying that ticket and seeing Earth from orbit. I believe that would be one of the most fundamentally life-changing views any of us could ever have, to see our planet as it is. It's truly a spaceship. We are a self-contained system. But you ask, what is next? What else is out there? What have I seen in my career? And I think one of the most dramatic things that we've seen over the 20 plus years that I served was the reduction of cost in the access to space. So SpaceX coming in and other organizations that drove down the cost of launch so that we could actually start proliferating capabilities. We didn't have to spend $1 billion just to launch our satellite. We could instead launch 40 or 50 for $40 million. And so the capabilities that are enabled by that, the resilience that is enabled. So basically, we don't have 4 or 5 big fat targets sitting in orbit. Well, now there might be 400 or 4,000. And that makes our adversaries' targeting calculus far more challenging and turns the cost curve around. So that's the biggest change I think we've seen, and we're going to continue to see. That's really going to drive innovation.
Well, I know, you are absolutely really smart, just not just a nerd, but obviously very intelligent. And I can definitely appreciate the time you invested in getting that education and fostering, furthering your education and career throughout your Air Force and Space Force service. How, as you said at the top, you're sort of grieving the loss of your career. But let's flip it on its head, and how much is the military losing with that intelligence and with that development over 20 years of, I know what I was worth and what I was valued and what I brought to the table, and I'm definitely getting a good feel about what you did. So how much are we losing by losing the amount of people that we are through this reduction?
Well, we're losing thousands of highly trained, capable service members that have done their job, deployed around the world, in every service, in just about every rank, in every career field. And these are unplanned departures. We don't bring in someone right off the street, send them to basic training, and replace someone with 16 or 24 years of service. We have to plan for that, and that's a long-term responsibility to ensure that happens. And I'm going to give a great example from my last week in uniform. Every time I would go to a meeting, it would be my last. It would be a difficult thing to do. And one of the very final ones was with the Joint Staff at the Pentagon. And I happened to be the last person that they got to as they went around the table. Just, hey, any updates? And I was there representing my service. So I said, here's one business related option from the Space Force. And also, this will be my last meeting. It's an unplanned departure. So I'm not sure when we'll have a replacement in this forum. And the officer sitting next to me said, why? Where are you going? Did you get another assignment? I'm like, no, I did not. I do not meet this administration standard for military excellence and readiness. And it took a moment, but reality kind of dawned on the room, and this room full of admirals and generals stood up one by one, walked over, shook my hand, and said, it's been an honor to serve with you. And I walked out of that room with tears in my eyes, because it had been such an honor for me to have served in that role in those places, not just to represent my service or my community, but to wear United States on my chest every day. And in walking into rooms like that, just like the thousands of other transgender service members did, no one saw us as that trans person. I walked into a room and you saw a colonel, and you saw all the things that my uniform represented, that experience that came with it, that responsibility that we owned. And that's what we're losing, is that depth of experience, that depth of desire to serve from thousands of incredible people.
Well, I want to also follow up. Thank you for sharing that, Bree. And I'm thankful that you were acknowledged, albeit it's it's still really difficult. And that, you had me like in tears over here. But I also want to follow up and talk about the emotional and mental impact of having your career cut short, like as you said, involuntarily. How much notice, how much time did service members get to pull their families out of schools, daycare, their lives? Where are they going back to? They're in this hiatus. It's like you're trying to wait to figure out, are you going to be able to retire properly? What is that human toll for the service member?
It's been devastating and so difficult for many people. And there's been court challenges. So the initial policy that came out was put on hold for several months as these court challenges proceeded. And in fact, in two of the different cases, the district court judge ruled in trans service members' favor, put an injunction on the policy, basically saying that our service records were Exhibit A, why there was no rationale for this policy, and it was based only in animus. But the government appealed to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, well, while the appeals courts review this and eventually it comes back to us, government, it's okay, you can go ahead and put this policy in place. So when that happened, there was a roughly 1 month period where people were able to elect for what has been termed voluntary separation. And it was anything but. And then there was a further 1 month addition to that for people who were reservists or in the National Guard. And so it was this very short window to make this decision of, am I going to take the relative knowns of how they're going to kick me out, or do I say nothing and wait for this, what the government termed the involuntary separation period? That was very poorly defined. There was, in fact, no published policy on how it was going to be that they were going to then identify you and kick you out. Even now, much of that policy does not formally exist, though there's a lot of fear around that. Not only are people going to have to be asked on their annual health exam, or have commanders or individuals who know anything about them refer them for evaluation and removal from the service. I mean, the very essence of what feels and looks like a witch hunt. And the implications are far wider, because the way it's written, I think a lot of women in service should be very concerned, particularly if they are stronger, faster, look masculine than many others. It encourages people to report on one another for signs or hints you might be trans. And that's scary for a lot of people. But for those of us going through it, it's a quick turn. Once you either identified yourself or get identified, it's a matter of months before you are out of the service and leave it behind.
Man.
That's anytime something this like life altering can be subjective, it's really scary for like you mentioned, someone who presents more masculine or someone like that could be in, because of the language being so vague. I tell people all the time, whether you know it or not, someone looks up to you. So when you're at your worst, I use that to tell people, to remind people how much they matter. Because, and sometimes you have a conversation with someone that you've had 100 times, maybe even 3 times that day, But for that person, they've never met someone who's experienced the things that you've experienced. And for them, it just sort of sits in their mind in a way that a week or two later, they go, holy crap. Like something slaps, something hits the table, what the cat knocks the milk off the table, whatever it is that happens, there's a moment where they realize that you have said something to them that will change the way they think about things. So I tell them to try to act like that person is watching, especially when no one is. And so from PBS to New York Times to podcast, you've helped shape some of this national conversation on service, gender identity, and patriotism. So there are people out there who look up to you. You know that. And whether you know it or not, and sometimes I know we dig on ourselves and we don't, we try to approach things in a humble way, but you matter. And there are people that look up to you and what you do, and you have an impact on their lives. So I think that I lean a little further into my own injury of acceptance, and I'm almost proud of my prosthetic in some ways, more so than I would, because I think it's important to not be ashamed for those who need that, who see me and might be able to go, he doesn't care, why should I? Because I saw a guy on the cover of a Men's Health magazine in a wheelchair who was in incredible shape. And I don't even know the magazine. I can't find it because it was one of those things that I just saw and it just sat in my brain, and it made me realize I can take better care of myself than I was. But I wanted to be able to be for someone else what that simple picture was for me. So, but even when it's positive, there's pressure. And so I want to ask two questions. One, for you, are you aware of that pressure all the time? How do you cope with that? What positive coping mechanisms do you think have helped you the most? And if you have a message you want to throw out right here, feel free to do that. Even if it doesn't follow the Uniform Code of Justice or whatever.
Well, yes. Am I aware of the pressure? Absolutely. And that is not just me. I think that is just about every trans service member, because they are so frequently the only one in their unit or their organization or even on their base where they know they are being watched, and they know that arguments are being made and have been made against our service. So all the time you are thinking, am I living up to expectations? How am I shattering people's stereotypes? And because the stereotypes of who we are as trans people are outlandish, but of who we are as trans people in the military are even more over the top. So often people would think that we are completely incapable of doing our jobs just by being a trans person, or that someone like me who's a trans woman would be too busy weeping about my gender identity to ever return fire from a foxhole, or thinking about what I'm going to wear that night rather than accomplishing the mission that is
I
right.
can cry and fight, by the way, in case anyone's ever wondering. I can cry and fight. I've won more than one fight with tears in my eyes, so whatever.
Absolutely. We are
Samesies,
at our
Joe.
toughest in many cases with tears in our eyes, and our most resilient because we know what matters. And that's really important. In fact, I had one colonel that I worked for not long after I had come out, and he retired after a few months. But before he left, he invited me into his office, and he told me that I shattered his stereotype just by showing up to work every day. I'm like, sir, that's a really low bar that I just stepped right over. But that's what's out there. So yes, the pressure is there, not just to meet the standard, but to exceed the standard, to be the very best, to break people's perceptions that we are in some way damaged or broken, instead of just reaching for the best version of ourselves. Because that's what it's all about. And I think that's a really positive, almost infectious attitude to share. If I can be my best self, our unit can be our best version of itself. So can all of you. So that's been really important to me, to be my best and be on at many times. And the positive coping that I have is really about knowing that I have made a difference. It is about remembering those phone calls that I got from another commander or from a first sergeant somewhere who called me and said, I have someone in my unit. How do I help them? Or that I would get in those last couple of months at the Pentagon where I would walk past someone and they would stop me in the hallway and they would say, you don't know me, but I love you. And again, those tears that we made a difference. We showed that we were capable of exceeding the standard at every turn. And just having that memory, having those relationships that I was able to build with the people around me matters so much. And it's why I stay both thankful for the service that I had and hopeful for the future that I know we can have, because people have seen us. They know who we are, and they know the value that an inclusive military brings to this nation. They see the same concerns that I have of what do we lose if we have a military that becomes more partisan, more political, where we have people changing out with administrations. It's hard to build a professional force in that environment, and we need to be able to get back to where everyone is welcomed who can meet the standard.
Well, you certainly have value. You have a lot of it, and you've displayed that value across incredibly high performing arenas: military operations, space tech, policy, authorship, and advocacy. So kind of looking at how you're able to navigate those and create so much value when you think about the routines and habits that have helped you to operate at that level. What kind of stands out for you specifically? Are there any morning rituals, time management strategies, mindset tools that you stay focused and energized on, mission ready? So what are those things that enable you to navigate and perform at such a high level in so many different places?
Well, admittedly, I am the worst. And this goes back to that I don't want to join the army, don't put structure in my life.
You heard it here first. Bree's the worst.
I am a bit of a disaster in that stuff. So it can be just having checklists, maintaining a calendar, making sure that get to the gym and work out every day, and do the things that I need to do to be the version of myself that can show up for others. And I think that gets back to the very thing we hear every time we get on an airplane: put your own oxygen mask on first. So do those things that fill your cup. And that's so individual for anyone. For me, that is taking the time I need to go sit on top of a mountain somewhere and take in the view, whether that's hiking up it in the summer or being just about to ski down it in the winter. It's just that moment at the peak where you take that deep breath and that brings me back. And that makes sure that when I get back to the office or to whatever I'm doing, I am there for others, because I have made sure to take care of myself and do the things that I need to do to be ready when I'm called upon.
Thank you.
So I know that you obviously have to be a people person to be in the shoes and be the advocate that you are. The pen is mightier than the sword. I've heard that 1,000 times, and you've written 3 books. One that just came out, was it this year?
Yeah, in January.
Okay. So, and that was with Valor and Visibility. Is that right?
That's right.
And yeah, I'm going to let you share, because I could talk about it, because it's like stories from Americans in Uniform, right? Can you tell us a little bit about what inspired it? What's it about? Feedback?
Of course, 2 of the 3 books I've written, including With Valor and Visibility, and it's the first version, which is called With Honor and Integrity, are collections of stories of transgender military folks in their own words. Basically, it was a prompt: tell me your story. And it was a way to show, again, that there's no one way to serve, and that we serve for a variety of different reasons that are common with all Americans, and that funny things happen, that sad things happen, that incredible things happen that no one would believe if we didn't share the story and share this common bond of military service. So those books were really just a chance to archive some incredible stories and share the way that those people served. But there was a historical aspect as well. With the first one, we captured the history of the fight over open transgender service. And it was published in a kind of hopeful era. We were just moving back into a time of open service where thousands more were able to come out and serve. But this most recent version, I think, does one thing more than anything else, and that is capture the courage of the people that were willing to share their stories. Because the stories were all written late last summer and early fall during a period where over $200 million was spent demonizing transgender people in the run up to the election. And so these folks saw the writing on the wall. And yet were willing to share their experiences regardless of that, and to be public with who they are and what they have done in their time in service. And so that came out in January and stands, I hope, as a testament to what they've accomplished and their willingness to sacrifice and to serve on behalf of this nation. My other book is about a little bit more of an academic look at how LGBTQ folks create and develop leadership capabilities in interesting ways, basically taking those negative experiences that so many of us have experienced, or things that at least appear negative at the time, such as coming out, transition, or discrimination, and flip that on its head in a way that develops a sense of leadership that is about all of us. How do we take care of one another? How do we make sure that we all have the opportunity to succeed? Really taking that culture we have in America and sometimes in the military of bullying and hazing to say, I went through some terrible, terrible things. So until you do those things and do those awful things, I'm not going to respect you. Where instead we say, I went through some terrible things and I don't want you to have to go through those terrible things. So I'm going to knock down those barriers so that when you have the chance to get to where I've been, you still have the energy to go further. And that, I think, is a pretty special way to lead.
As a stepmom to a trans male son, I want to thank you, Bree, for giving others the platform to share their stories and to remind others that we are all humans and have a human experience, and we all have value. My son has value, and so does his brother. So I think what you're doing is so incredibly important. I know you've got a podcast. Where can people hear it?
So you can hear our podcast, Forged in Fire, on Spotify. And that podcast is kind of an extension of Forging Queer Leaders. It's interviews with LGBTQ leaders from all walks of life about how they became the person they are and how they developed the way that they lead. And I did want to say, Stacey, thank you for being an amazing mom to one of those kids, because it is our stories and it is sharing them, sharing that common sense of humanity we can find with one another when we talk. And that can be as simple as we like the same food, or we cheer for the same sports team. We were in the same service together. Those are all bonds that we can find and that help change those stereotypes. Because those stereotypes are out there being perpetuated by people who are either true believers and for some reason or another really think that we are the problem as trans people, or more likely it's coming from people who are using us as a wedge, as a distraction, as a thing to shake the keys and say, look at these scary trans people and how they're destroying your lives and destroying America, while not paying attention to all these things we are doing over here to potentially line our own pockets. And a lot of people just take that in and believe it. But when we have that human connection, when we can bond and share our vulnerability and our humanity with one another, we break those stereotypes.
I think that it says a lot about someone's character when they place something in front of someone's humanity. When they, whether it's race or sex or gender or religion, I think that if you put that thing in front of the fact that you're dealing with a human being, and no human being that is functioning in society will go out of their way to purposefully make their life more complex and more difficult. So it really just comes down to human people doing human things. It always bothers me when a waiter or a waitress messes something small up and there's literal fear when they apologize. And I'm like, we're human people and we are famously screwing it up all the time, doing the best we can. And so nobody is trying to make their life harder. So I just want to say thank you for sharing some of the things that you've shared with us. It means a lot. You matter so much. There are people that look up to you, and people who put anything in front of your humanity. It says more about them than it does you. But your time is so appreciated. I can't begin to thank you so much for spending time talking to us today. And Alphas, I do want to say, please check out breefram.com, not to be confused with Bee Farm, which you should buy anyway, just because that would be hilarious.
The worst piece of mail I ever got screwing up my name was addressed to Brain Farm.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like, well, that's cool.
But no, that would be such a marketing coup. Bree Fram's Bee Farm. I would love that.
That's great, because anytime that I see something that's like organ harvesting at all, I just think space operas. So, but to learn more about her new most important mission, go to breefram.com. While there, don't forget to click the social links and follow her on your preferred platforms. I was going to say MySpace as a joke, but Minecraft popped in my head and I lost the whole thread of the joke that I was going for. So follow Bree on Minecraft.
My kids would be thrilled that you follow me on Minecraft because they've been trying to get me to play forever.
You should. You go in creative mode and just build. I'm telling you, it is a lot of fun. But we will have the website and social media links in our show notes. But before you sign off, is there anything that you want to share with our alphas before that we didn't discuss, Bree?
Really, it is just a gratitude for everyone who has served and who has given a piece of themselves to this nation, because that does matter. And I think that collective spirit of service is something that is going to carry us forward. And we need that. We need more people who are willing to serve in whatever capacity it is. And their service makes a difference for all of us. So thank you for having me, and thank you for all your audience for listening and for caring.
Thank you for your service. Thank you so much for visiting us today. Alpha, stick around for some scuttlebutt after the break.
Discover the power of your voice and form a deeper understanding of our nation and the principles that shape it. As a participant in the American Legion Oratorical Contest, you'll develop a deeper knowledge of the U.S. Constitution and a greater understanding of the duties, responsibilities, rights, and privileges of American citizenship. As you step up to this academic speaking challenge, you'll learn leadership skills, the art of oration, and have a shot at winning up to $25,000 in scholarships. Seize your moment. Visit legion.org/oratorical and take the first steps towards shaping your future today.
All right, alphas, we hope you had a great break. We hope that you got something really healthy to drink, ran like 250 miles. Now it's time for some scuttlebutt.
Okay, you fellas know that I have horses. Been a horse person my whole life. And my sister...
I think they're called centaurs, but okay, go ahead.
Luckily, the super producer Holly put in a story for today about the horse units of the Army, and you know these units. I visited them at Fort Hood and Killeen. I have visited their stables. I visit the honor guard up at Arlington. So I know there are other horse units scattered around. But the Army is moving to dismantle the bulk of horse units, part of a broader push by service planners to eliminate programs that they see as peripheral to the core mission of fighting and training for wars, which maybe at one time horses were essential, but now that we are, they're more of a ceremonial than tactical warfighter. The Army will begin phasing out 5 horse-mounted ceremonial units stationed at Fort Irwin, California, Fort Huachuca, Arizona, Fort Riley, Kansas, Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and Fort Cavazos in Texas. Steve Warren, a service person, told the reporters this past July. The decision impacts 141 horses currently used for ceremonial events and other pageantry traditions that trace back to the Army's cavalry roots, but have no operational roles in today's force. All of the horses are expected to be placed up for adoption. I will tell you this, for anybody who's concerned, their adoption forms, their adoption process is rigorous, and nobody is going to get their hands on a horse that doesn't deserve it. And these horses have earned it. I mean, they're hardworking horses. So the move comes as the Army's premier ceremonial unit at Arlington National Cemetery recently revamped its horse program after intense public scrutiny following the deaths of 4 horses in the span of less than a year in 2022. Or less than the span of a year starting in 2022. That April, CNN reported that 2 of the horses used to carry caskets at Arlington had died, one from intestinal blockage, which is called colic for folks, which if you've had children, you know what colic is. Anyway, this horse had intestinal blockage caused by ingesting 44 pounds of gravel and sand. I will say this as well. As a horse person who lives in South Carolina that has a lot of sand mixed in with the dirt, it is not uncommon for horses to get sand and ingest sand on a daily basis, and that accumulates. It doesn't necessarily pass unless they have some supported digestive support. So it's not uncommon. And you may be thinking, why does this horse eat gravel? It's because they probably were trying to graze on grass that was interspersed with gravel, or they were trying to eat hay that was on top of gravel or sand and then inadvertently ingested it. So I'm not trying to justify what happened to these horses. I'm just saying, I usually tell people who are, first-time horse owners that horses will do everything every day to kill themselves. And so your job as a horse owner primarily is to keep them alive. And that's not always the easiest task. As a seasoned horse owner, I failed. And so they don't make it easy. At internal Army investigation revealed the widespread neglect within the unit, including dry and moldy feed, which is unacceptable, in my opinion, over the whole colic thing, which could be, an accident. Anyway, cramped and unsanitary living conditions and inadequate veterinary oversight, which surprises me because the Army has some of the best vets in the U.S. By the end of that year, 2 more horses in that unit had died. The fallout prompted the Army to establish Task Force Military Working Equids in 2022, a month after the first 2 horses died at Arlington, to evaluate the treatment of overall horses, mules, and donkeys across installations. That review, obtained by military.com via Freedom of Information request, painted a grim picture. For the more than 250 animals across a dozen sites that were assessed, many were found to be underfed, poorly housed, and suffering from health issues due to improper farrier care, inadequate shelter, and exposure to dangerous chemicals, including rat poison. Hell no. I don't keep rat poison in my barn at all, even though they are little twerps. Anyway, the nearly 30-page assessment pointed to force-wide issues with funding, feed, poor leadership communication, inattentive veterinary care, and little in the way of welfare expertise. And I will say this, like when I visited the Fort Hood installation, they had some civilians there who were definitely seasoned horse people and mule skinners. But the thing is, the primary bulk of the work was done by active duty soldiers who had never had horse experience. And so ultimately you're only as smart as your most uneducated person. And that's where, these little cracks turn into fissures, turn into, wide chasms. And then ultimately these animals pay the price. So anyway, the nearly 30-page assessment pointed to the force-wide issues with funding. But more than that, due to unskilled support, there were areas and gaps in the execution of appropriate herd management, feed and nutrition, ability to have right facilities, potentially in some locations because there were older locations that needed to be upgraded. The Army Veterinary Corps Chief and Task Force Military Working Equids Lead, Colonel Deborah Whitmer, said at the time, not all installations that the task force reviewed had such dire conditions. such as Fort Cavazos, which scored high on the marks. Hey, it's Texas. You know, they know how to treat their horses. Communication, feed, pasture facilities, herd management, and veterinary care. But the issues were found to be in various locations to one extent or another, Whitmer went on to say. The findings pointed to a larger trend in the modern military. While the Army used horses extensively during World War I, they became relegated to the ceremonial uses as armored vehicles and other technological advances usurped their employment on the battlefield. Horses did play a key role in the early days of the war in Afghanistan. And there's a movie about it, by the way, if you want to check it out. For those special operations troops, those horses were procured locally, and the service members didn't have to acquire the knowledge of how to care for those animals long term. Now, the horses almost entirely removed from operational need once ubiquitous soldier familiarity with the animals in wars past have dwindled as expertise required for their care waned, leading to dangerous and fatal results. As I said, most of these folks have never had equine experience before.
Yeah.
After 2 years of efforts and millions of dollars allocated to improvements, the caisson detachment returned to the Arlington National Cemetery for the first time recently. It debuted with custom-fitted tack and saddles, a much lighter caisson, a wagon that carries the casket, expanded stalls, and limited work cycles. The unit's leaders touted frequent respite for the horses at a roughly 40-acre equestrian wellness facility in Virginia, replete with aqua treadmills. I will say this, an aqua treadmill in the tens of thousands of dollars, guys. So
I think this is really interesting because I think that a lot of times, you know, you'll see celebrities and stuff like that. They'll get money and they romanticize this idea of buying a ranch. And so I say this because it was a story floating around where Post Malone wanted to do music with Coulter Wall. And he reached out to Coulter Wall to say, hey, let's do music together. And Coulter Wall replied, that sounds great. I'm really excited to do that, but I'm running cattle for the next 2 months. And Post Malone said that was the first time that he ever met a real cowboy. He's like, okay, so that guy's priorities are literally cattle and then music. And that's Coulter Wall, man. I mean, what a cool guy. But you know, usually there's generational knowledge behind people who take care of horses and really know what they're doing. And so even if you go into the military and are taught well, there's just some things that I feel like you can't, and I'm not speaking from experience. I'm saying that I'm speaking from ignorance, as I often do. But I feel like there's some things that you just don't know unless you grew up around it.
Well, I would say this one hits for me because I was stationed at Fort Riley. So the commanding general's mounted color guard is what we called them at Fort Riley. And I've been there, you know, I've been to the stables. It's an interesting story because, you know, when I was there, and it could be different now as things progress, but I just remember the honor of the soldiers that had anything to do with the horses that were there. So to see that those conditions, you know, deteriorated so much, I was almost kind of waiting to see like if Fort Riley was called out, you know, good, bad, or indifferent. But I can see from the practical use case of, yes, they were predominantly for ceremony and that's it. I will, however, say standing in a battalion, in a brigade, you know, change of command, and having a cavalry charge at full speed on the parade field while the cannons are going off was one of the more incredible things that I've experienced.
I bet you could feel it in your chest.
Oh, 100%. And it's like 7 horses. So then you go and look at like a Civil War kind of battlefield, and you think about like the 600 or maybe 1,000 horse charge that might have been going on. And it's hard to even imagine the thunder, you know, that they might have been experiencing. And we also had the opportunity to do like an OPD with the battalion commander and all the company commanders, and the captains, you know, got to go and ride through the post, you know, on the horses on a curated experience. So that was cool. You know, very meaningful as well. So I hate that, like, maybe the rich history and the opportunity to be able to connect in that way, and also knowing like the soldiers that were a part of that detachment, like how much pride they had in that. So it's interesting to hear, you know, about the deteriorating conditions, but that's also seemingly like a leadership and a cultural thing of the Army maybe that's trickling down as well.
Yeah, well, it might be an educational thing too, because if you've never had a dog kept in your house, if your dog was always an outdoor dog and everybody in your neighbor kept their dogs outdoors, then your inclination would be that all dogs belong outdoors.
Yeah.
You don't know what you don't know. I mean, maybe that's not the right,
Well, do you keep your horses indoors? Actually, you do. I've seen your barn. It's pretty nice.
They have a house of their own.
They do have the house of their own.
No, I mean, and you can't teach every nuance, Joe. As you said, a lot of people, it's generational. That it's from the time I was young, I was taught a lot of stuff, and that over years I just accumulated that information.
Horses.
Yeah, about animal husbandry particularly, but horses, very specifically. That doesn't mean that somebody can't learn. It's just that you don't know everything. Even I don't know everything.
Well, it seems like they would need like some animal husbandry horse experts that are just like the staff that stay there, and
Get
then
Stacy some contracting work.
Yeah, then there would be like
I'm full, Joe. They'd have to pay me very well. But there are experts everywhere, and I'm sure just like Texas did really well, there are equestrians everywhere that people.
But also that might be a great spot to save some money when you're talking about the ever expanding defense budget.
Yeah, I think if you were to look at closing a stable that was mainly for ceremonies versus keeping one person who could keep the war fighter flexing, I would say give up the ceremony stuff. You can always, contract a local person to do those as needed, if needed.
I mean, there's going to be war reenactors that will be able to do some pretty incredible stuff.
And they would probably jump at it for free.
And people have been, and history is rife with the power of a cavalry charge. I mean, you can't read about any war prior to, the early 20th century without somebody mentioning how devastating a cavalry charge is. So I'd like to think that the history of what has happened won't fade far, and hopefully people will work to keep that stuff.
And where we need to keep it is where it's staying, which is at Arlington. I mean, you can't replace the feeling of the caisson and the riderless horse. But anyway, Joe,
there are no Brabants though. But
I do know Brabants. Joe, what do you got?
So during his third Pacific voyage, beginning in 1776, which I think we can all agree was a pretty good year, Captain James Cook, not to be mistaken with Captain James Hook, recorded in his journal. Yes. The universality of tattooing is a curious subject for speculation. Today, however, getting inked as a member of the U.S. military is a borderline rite of passage. So much so, writes J.D. Simpkins, that the military culture to tattooing is so prevalent that finding an ink-free service member is infinitely more rare than the alternative.
I actually got my first tattoo before I joined the service, so.
He was writing it in 1776? Wow.
Yeah. People were still doing it back then.
Getting buzz, getting ink.
Mom and a heart. Where do you think that stuff came from, bro?
What's the anchor on my lower back?
That's a tramp stamp, no matter what it is.
No matter.
I mean, how many people in the Pacific Islands had tattoos?
Yeah.
Like long time ago, and I think that was brought to the Americas, to our native culture, because they had ink. Yeah, so.
Well, I mean, there's a long history of Japanese tattooing, Samoan tattooing, and it's a very different styles. It's so interesting. Tattooing is a really neat historical subject.
I'm very ignorant to the history of tattooing.
Well, do you have a tattoo,
no.
Adam?
Mm-mm.
Oh, you.
We should get you an Apache helicopter. Right?
Yeah, I made a joke that he had that his shirt. That he had that exact thing tattooed under his shirt, which was funny.
You know what? Adam needs a tramp stamp. Let's make a tramp stamp of an Apache helicopter profile.
Yeah,
that's perfect. So, real quick, I got told a story. It's the only time I've ever heard a story that hurt me to hear. Somebody went into boot camp, Parris Island, and as a recruit had already gotten an Eagle Globe and Anchor tattoo. Could you imagine what they went through. Apparently, they were forced to scrub it daily until it was so scarred you couldn't even tell what it was.
That's very presumptive that they thought
That's
they would
wild.
actually get
Yeah.
through.
I mean, maybe they had a parent
okay,
who died
hold
on the
on.
battlefield.
There could be caveats here because we instantly go to the fact that they thought they were going to be a Marine.
Yeah.
What if their parent was and they died and it was an honor, a
exactly.
memoriam?
That's
You don't
true.
know.
So you can't make assumptions, I guess.
I will say, though, it's a dangerous thing to do. I mean, you always hear, don't shave your head right before you go in because then you'll get picked out. Oh, you're ready, huh? You think you're ready for, getting an Eagle, Globe, and Anchor tattoo would be.
I have alopecia. My hair doesn't grow.
Yeah. With all due respect, Drill Sergeant, I have
You
alopecia.
get a Navy SEAL trident tattooed before basic?
on his face.
Come here, you idiot.
So now, obviously it's crazy. The U.S. military and society's embracing and liberalization surrounding the stigma and regulations governing tattoos is thanks in large part to the Second World War. The vast expansion of naval personnel in the onset of World War II. Go Navy. We brought tattoos to the mainstream.
Mainly of
Drop that anchor right here on my left breast.
In a new era of tattoo tradition, helped by figures like artist Norman Keith Collins, also known as Sailor Jerry. What a nickname. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, sailors, soldiers, and new recruits alike lined tattoo parlors. I'm going to start that one again. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, soldiers, sailors, and new recruits alike lined tattoo. No, leave that in. I hold my shame out in the air.
You sure do.
To receive their permanent symbols of pride, patriotism, and pinups. While Captain Cook, I almost say Captain Hook every time.
Arr.
All right, Peter Pan, keep going.
I'm trying. Pacific Voyages exposed Royal Navy sailors to Polynesian body art, such traditions were practiced in early societies in Europe and Asia, and by indigenous cultures worldwide for thousands of years, according to the Naval History and Heritage Command. Cook's exploration of the Pacific, however, did popularize the tradition among his fellow seamen in both Europe and the Americas, so much so that by the 18th century, a third of British and a fifth of American sailors sported at least one tattoo. I wonder what the main, like for us, it's like, I'm sure that the tattoo artists are sick of getting like tribal tattoos. Like, oh my gosh, another tribal tattoo around a white guy's arm. Like,
I'm sorry, but I want to know how they can quantify those statistics of all British and American sailors.
Well, they did a census survey. They went back in time in the telephone booth.
Come back here and let me see your whole body. I'm counting.
Somebody walked around with a hat.
This is for documentation.
Hey, maybe when they were doing their annual lice de-infestation treatments, the doctors took note of who had inked up bodies.
So
these things you got to really peel back the layers.
Delousing and tattoo assessment.
Delousing and tattooing; those things go hand. You always delouse before you tattoo. That's what I always
imagine. The tattooing comes down, and the sergeant major's like, "All right, everybody, line up. It's time for a tattoos inspection."
During the American Civil War, men in both the Union and Confederate navies often were tatted with. I bet those tattoo artists were double dipping too. They're like, "No, I only deal with the Union," and then he goes down to the Confederates. Nah, bro, I'm a Confederate tattoo artist.
My tattoo parlor stands on the Mason-Dixon line. I take both.
Well, there you go. With military insignia motifs and names of their sweethearts back home. After the March 1862 Battle of the Ironclad, the historic clash between the USS Monitor and the CSS Virginia, requests for tattoos to commemorate the historic engagement were seen on both sides of the Mason-Dixon line, right where your tattoo parlor is. Yeah.
I called it.
Yep. Somebody was smart. Sailor Jerry, maybe. By the 1898 Spanish-American War, Remember the Maine was a popular choice to be emblazoned on the chest of sailors who were going off to war. By this time, writes Naval Heritage and History Command, these tattoos had already acquired features recognized today as essential elements of military and patriotic tattoos. The curved scroll with a slogan, name, or date, the stars and the stripes, or a giant eagle backdrop. Yes. Many of them proliferated thanks to the newly invented electric tattoo machine. During World War I, servicemen were getting their military ID numbers and later Social Security numbers. That seems dangerous these days. Tattooed on their bodies as a means of identification in case they were injured or killed in service. The
And their
practice was
mother's maiden name.
yeah, and then they were like, "Hey, let's put this on metal and not, tattoo your." Yeah, when was credit invented though? When did it get dangerous to give your Social Security number out?
I don't know, but
1919.
the military ID was also separate, or the military ID number was separate from the Social Security number, which now is one and the same. But it does beg the question too. Like, we would put one of our tags in our boot and then one around our necks just in case one got separated from the other. You know what I'm saying?
I swallowed one, and so it was in me for like 2 days, and then you would just rotate them.
Yeah,
you could wash one, obviously. Just don't get them confused. Yeah,
you stinking Marines in your crayon eating. Dog tag eating.
We definitely drew on them with crayons before we swallowed them. It was otherwise it was gross.
My question would be, did they put their numbers on every extremity in case they got separated from the body?
It's just luck of the draw, I guess. I don't know, man. I guess just pick something you can't live without, like your throat.
867-5309.
Hey, that's my number. How'd you know that?
So, you guys are silly. So the practice was outright banned during World War II on the grounds that it might give aid and comfort to the enemy.
What?
Yeah. So I guess it's because if you had proof that you were a service member, it would
your ID number or Social Security number. I mean, that seems like a reasonable policy to put out.
I don't know. It just seems like it came from the top, and all the soldiers were like, "This is dumb," like it often does.
Well, look, here's my name, my rank, and my Social Security number. Okay, that's all you're getting, buddy.
Geneva Convention, baby. Despite this, body art remained firmly on the fringes of society well into the 20th century. During or after the American declaration of war on December 8th, 1941, Honolulu and the port of San Diego became major hubs for men and occasionally some women to get inked. During the war, Honolulu alone boasted 8 parlors and 33 operators, gaining the dubious title of the world's tattoo center. Interesting.
Fun fact, my grandfather and his brother were both stationed at Pearl Harbor pre- and post-bombing. And had quite a bit of tattoos. So I imagine they obtained many of them.
That's really interesting.
At one of these 8 parlors.
Well, it's not so surprising. It was the world's tattoo center of the time.
True.
So, Bert Grimm, which is a fantastic name. I'm Grimm.
Is he part of the Brothers Grimm, you think?
Well, they're probably named after him. Known as the godfather of modern tattoos, spent over 2 decades perfecting his craft in St. Louis, Missouri.
From the Lou, and he's proud.
During the war, the famed tattoo artist etched symbols of love and belief of God and country onto countless sailors and soldiers waiting to go into battle. But Grimm noted the two often sought different inking motifs. In 1942, he told the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, the main difference between the soldiers and sailors is that when a sailor comes in to get tattooed, it's always something with an anchor or a battleship. And the soldiers go more for flags and eagles. That's fair.
Yeah.
The war, the article continued, has been responsible for shortages of tattoo equipment. All the tattoo needles are made in England. Also, although tattoo artists usually don't mention it to servicemen patrols, most of the darkest and richest tattoo dyes come from Germany.
What? This makes me wonder, like, in an effort, is this before they stopped using, like, or did they reuse needles at the time? Was this like Hep C?
I'm sure they did. My stepfather was a dentist before they knew to use gloves and got Hep C and died of cirrhosis. So yeah, I don't think that they really understood blood diseases at all, early on. But since then, which dyes are just flowers generally, right? Isn't that mostly where dyes come from?
Well, I mean, initially they were made up of organic, but I don't know anymore.
Like berries and flowers. It's all plants.
I'm not sure when synthetic.
I'm just wondering what plants are in Germany that made such rich dyes.
I don't know. South Carolina was the indigo capital of the world.
Indigo is awesome. I think that's a really beautiful color. So, But since then, the acceptance and proliferation of tattoos has spiked both in Americas and abroad, with the U.S. Navy remaining the least restrictive among the U.S. branches of service in terms of body art. So, what do you think? Like when you see stuff, especially with the Marines, everybody's got eagle, globe, and anchor. Did you guys see something in your particular branches that were more prevalent than others?
Chinese characters that people didn't really know what.
That probably didn't know. Yeah.
You're like, I would like my name in Chinese characters. I'm like, I don't know if a Chinese character really says Samantha. You know what I'm saying?
No, it doesn't. It's probably like drunk white
Sorry,
girl
baby girl.
or something. Yeah.
I
You
think
probably
what's
have.
like a specific thing, the thing that became more prevalent, I think, in the global war on terror is like the sleeves or like the full legs, you know, especially for operators. So, I mean, I don't know if there's like an aggregate of like what was more common, but I definitely think like that has carried through a lot to be like very common. I've seen some that are absolutely terrible, and I've seen some that are like, wow.
I saw one
incredible
that
art.
was just hold fast across somebody's knuckles. That was cool. And then another one that I think has stood the test of time would be Death Before Dishonor. That's another one I've seen a fair amount of, or, you know, of course, across cannons or crossed.
My younger brother has gotten a lot of tattoos. He actually got a sleeve. He didn't like it. He blacked out his whole arm.
Wow.
And he's got Showtime on his knuckles.
Like HBO Showtime or like
no, it's time to go. Funny thing is, he's a truck driver, so anytime he starts the trucking haul, he just texts me and he says Showtime.
Wouldn't you hate to get beat up with a guy who has Showtime tattooed on his knuckles?
Man, he will mess you up.
Yeah. No regrets.
No regrets, baby.
Not one letter.
Then he got a pin up of his wife, but then they just got a divorce.
Oh, he's got to turn that into a hula girl now.
That's the thing.
Or is it her name?
I would probably not put somebody's name like on my body. Even I don't care how well.
Oh, yeah.
There's exceptions for me. I'll put my animals' names on my body.
But never someone you love.
No, I had an older brother that had an ex-wife too, and then he got another tattoo over it, which was like a rose with a snake.
I think the most famous white ex-wife tattoo cover-up though has got to be Johnny Depp, where he had Winona and then he had it changed to Wino Forever.
Nailed it.
Yeah, that's pretty good. But we're going to have a link to that Military Times article in the show notes.
All right, I got something for you.
Yes.
Medal of Honor recipient Clint Romesha is getting a new comic book highlighting his actions in Afghanistan. Staff Sergeant Clint Romesha woke up early on the morning of October 3rd, 2009. Combat Outpost Keating, an international security assistance force base in Kamadesh near the Pakistani border of Afghanistan, was under attack. Romesha was serving as a section leader with Bravo Troop 3rd Squadron, 61st Cavalry Regiment, 4th Brigade Combat Team, 4th Infantry Division at the time. The soldiers at the outpost...
Army units, like, I'm sorry, Adam, but Army units are like, la la la, la 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la. I'm like,
Troop, Regiment, Brigade, Division. What is so difficult about that?
It's just like...
That is very clear to me. I know exactly where that guy belongs.
that is very. It's like a 10-digit grid coordinate. It does pretty much narrow it down, doesn't it?
Which platoon was he in? That's what we don't know.
I'm sorry.
I can tell you within 3 feet.
Who was his squad leader, by the way?
The soldiers at the outpost knew this was a full large-scale attack, not Taliban fighters taking potshots. Sure enough, the base was being attacked from all sides, with 300 Taliban militants pummeling the outpost with mortars and small arms fire. Romesha, a tank crewman turned Cav Scout, rushed into action. He moved through the outpost, dodging enemy fire, to scout the area and organize a defense, even as Taliban fighters surged into the area and seized an ammunition depot. Romesha continued to put himself at risk as he moved across the base. At one point, an RPG hit a generator he was taking cover behind, leaving him wounded. Despite that, he kept fighting, killing several Taliban fighters. While this was going on, he was on the radio, directing air support that delivered heavy fire to the enemy after several hours. ISAF forces managed to push the Taliban back. The Battle of Kamdesh, as it would be known, saw 8 Americans killed and 27 wounded. More than 100 Taliban fighters were believed to be killed or wounded in the fighting. For his part, Romesha would be awarded the Medal of Honor in 2013. Now his actions are immortalized in a comic book. This month, the Association of the United States Army released a new comic detailing the attack on the outposts and Romesha's actions in fighting back against the Taliban. This was written by Chuck Dixon, a longtime Batman writer, and with interior and cover art by Geoff Isherwood. Or is that Jeff? Jeff with a G.
Geoff.
The comic is free to read. After a quick background look at his life, the story moves to combat outpost Keating in the attack, with each page showcasing the heavy fire the soldiers were dealing with and Romesha's actions in organizing a counterattack and pushing back against the Taliban. The art is dynamic and detailed, both in capturing military equipment and the large-scale mustache that Romesha sported at the time of the battle. That's also where you can see all the equipment that was left behind for Afghanistan to have.
So you're saying his mustache was not in regulation?
Maybe not at the time of attack.
Yeah, it may be now. They may have changed it and they call it the Clint
Actually, every year his mustache grows a little bit in legend and lore.
So now it's more like handlebar mustache.
Going to be like a full-on like Fu Manchu. Dixon has written previous editions of the AUSA Medal of Honor comics series, and both creators previously worked on the war comic, The Nam. The comic is the latest in the AUSA series of graphic novels about service members who earn the highest military honor. The comic series started in 2018. 4 are being produced this year, with the one on Romesha being the second. Earlier this year, AUSA released one on William Carney and the Black Civil War soldier who rescued his regiment's flag during the Battle of Fort Wagner, whose actions inspired similar scenes in the movie Glory. 2 more Medal of Honor focused comics are set for release later this year. They will focus respectively on World War II soldier Van Barfoot, who single-handedly captured 3 machine gun nests in a day and then disabled an enemy tank, and Korean War chaplain Emil Kakon, who risked his own safety to care for wounded soldiers. Mm-hmm. Joe, have you ever read or seen one of these comic books? What do you think?
I pulled it up because I love comics. I've been reading comics, my whole life. And it looks awesome. Yeah, I pulled it up. You saw the flash. I'm like, yep, I'm that right there in my face. Yeah, I'm definitely going to read that, especially knowing it's free. But that's really, really, really cool to take these guys' stories and to put it in a medium like comic books is a really neat way, I think, to share. There's some people I know that will read any comic book whatsoever. So if that's what it takes to get history in some of these younger people, then I'm all for it.
I'll just say his mustache looks bold, but it also looks like it's in reg.
Yeah, but it's probably scraping the walls of regulation, as any good mustache should.
Just based off the graphic that I see from one of the cartoons, it looks like it's probably pushing regs. But it's
regs were made to be bent.
I mean, it looks like a good fuzzy caterpillar.
And I will say, there's a lot looser interpretations of regulations when you're in the thick of it. I think people, unless you're right there at the flagpole, there's some concessions made.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic.
All right. Well,
I got a
the
new
link
comic
where
to
you
read.
can see the cover artwork for the article will be in the show notes, but you can find it in Task and Purpose. Sounds like an awesome comic book worth checking out. Stacy.
Yeah. On a related note, the Americanism Division at National Headquarters released a new graphic novel to help junior high school and older readers learn about the U.S. flag. Hey, patriotism, go get your tattoos today. Rise of Our Flag was illustrated by U.S. Army Sergeant Austin Powell through the DoD Skill Bridge program. So you don't want to miss that. The graphic novel follows the epic journey of the Stars and Stripes from its origins of the War of 1812 to the 21st century, where it has remained a beacon of hope following September 11th, 2001 attacks. Check out emblem.legion.org and search for Rise of Our Flag, or find the link in our show notes.
Beautiful. All right, Alphas. Thank you for listening. We appreciate you. We love you. We'll see you tomorrow. You're making us lunch. You can subscribe to our podcast, our newsletter, or send us mail and guest recommendations at legion.org/Tango Alpha Lima. And we'll see you next week or tomorrow when lunch is ready.
Thanks. I want extra mayo.
Extra mayo for Stacy.